We are live.
All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is Erda City Council meeting. Today is Thursday, April 14th, 2023. Time is 7 p.m. We're in the Tooele County Auditorium located at 47 South Main Street, Tooele, Utah. This meeting is going on Google Meet and also
Can you speak up?
We can't hear you.
YouTube.
Enunciate.
Yes, I will try to do that.
You can always sit closer too, you know.
What happened to our
Or
micro?
you can speak up.
What happened to our public address?
It feeds back.
It's terrible.
Okay.
All right, Scott Grubay, you're here.
I am here.
Craig Smith,
Here.
Jess Bird is here, Kel Martin,
Here.
and Terry Miner.
Here.
All right, I think it's probably my turn. If you'll all rise, we'll be better than that. After me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll now open the meeting to public comment.
Is there anyone online, Jen?
There are a few people, but no one is raising a hand. So there's an agenda posted on the Utah Public Notice website that you could go and find, but that will have the agenda for this meeting today.
Seeing no other public comment, I move we close the public comment.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, we close public comment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public comment is now closed. We'll turn the time over to the Sheriff's Department.
Good evening, Sergeant Evans. Please excuse Lieutenant Wayman. He was unable to attend today. I have the stats for February and March to give to you guys, and we'll go over them here. That is February's.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, good stuff. You guys able to show by chance? I don't have another copy of
Do I
that.
have another March?
We get along good.
I've got
Those
February.
Februaries. Let's see, have.
This is February.
I have,
You have a March?
that's a March.
Okay.
Oh, looks like we got it. Okay. So for February, we had a total of 63 detailed calls, calls for service, 6 arrests, and 37 citations were issued. For the significant incidents we had, on the 10th of February, we were called to the Bronzewood Boys Home for vandalism. The juvenile was charged for felony vandalism. We had a death on February 19th, Bates Canyon. It's still under investigation, but nothing was suspicious at the time. The 23rd of February, we had a deputy that was assisting during the snowstorm and was ultimately hit by another vehicle. He was uninjured and returned to duty after being medically cleared. The 24th, we responded once again to Bronzewood, and 2 juveniles were charged for assault. And on the 27th, we again responded to Bronzewood and had 2 juveniles cited for Class A misdemeanor vandalism. In March, we had 74 details, 8 arrests, 28 citations. The significant incidents for March, vehicle was stopped for speeding in the area of 1000 West Erda Way. The driver was found to be intoxicated and was ultimately arrested. On the 19th, deputy conducted traffic enforcement, stopped a vehicle on Erda Way. The driver had warrants for his arrest and also had heroin. He was booked into the detention center. And then on the 25th of March, we responded to the Bronzewood Boys Home again and charged a juvenile for criminal mischief. That was all the significant things. Do you have questions or anything for us?
Now we'll turn the phone over to Treasurer Terry Minor.
All right. You may be in for some sticker shock, but it's really not as bad as it may sound. Deposits for this month was, into checking, was $80,891.07. Of that, $3,247.07 was for permits. $77,644 was from the PTIF account to the checking account. Now for the checks written. The first one, there was a non-cash check, so I had to rewrite on it. So like check number 1113 replaces 1094, so that $280 was already in the budget. And they cashed this one, so it should be good as long as that other one doesn't turn up. So checks written, Twilla County Roads, $40,939.53. Accounting, $750. City planner, $4,125. Legal, $5,000. Clerk salary, $869.81. Law enforcement, first quarter, $77,644. Dispatch services, first quarter, $8,209.25. North Twilla Fire Department permit fees, $4,297.64. And the Utah Department of Commerce for the permit fees for the third quarter, $156.27 for a total of $141,991.50. That was out of the check. And as far as the credit cards, we had a $245.40 that was paid on the 6th. And that was for the webcam and commo equipment to facilitate the firehouse for the planning and zoning to be able to hold their meetings. So yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Terry. The county emergency management has asked us to assign a emergency operations officer. So we could nominate and elect one tonight.
Well, here's what it amounts to. The emergency operations officer, primary and alternate. And what they will be responsible for is they are going to be the point of contact for the county. And they will also be the first on scene for like the incident commander and start doing the call out list. And by doing it through a resolution, we'll be granting them the ability to declare a disaster. And then with that, then they will be in charge of writing the disaster declaration. And they at times may be required, depending on how big of the incident, they may be required to respond to the EOC and the county EOC building. So it's more or less just giving a central point for the county to go through and give them that emergency. And then get all the rest of the council together and set up a command post and all that other stuff.
So Terry and I had a meeting on Monday with the Emergency Operations Center across this parking lot. And they need somebody that they can contact and somebody that they can look to contact them. So when that person calls them, they'll know something's up. It won't be a matter of who's calling us and should I stop what I'm doing to talk to this, whoever it is or not.
Yeah.
And so that ought to be either me or Terry. And since we're in flood season, flood's gonna hit my end of town before it hits Terry's. So I don't mind doing that. But if anybody else wants to run for this office, it's gonna be elected, so.
I'd like to formally nominate Scott Gervais for this position.
I'll second that.
I would too.
Anybody else wanna throw their hat in the ring?
Well, we need an alternate too, so
What's that?
we need an alternate as well.
Well, that's easy.
I'll amend the motion that we add Terry as an alternate.
Second amendment.
Everybody okay if we just accept these two assignments by default?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, here's another question. Do we want to do it like, say, the Emergency Operations Committee would be those? So that we didn't have to keep replacing the deal, that'd be an automatic, whoever is assigned to that committee? Or do we want to specify the certain individuals?
Well, it seems like that committee would always have two people, so you're gonna have to assign names anyway.
Well, yeah, but still, that way you wouldn't have to.
It makes sense that that committee, one of them is the contact, the other one's the alternate. It really does make sense.
I think so too.
All right, moving on, ordinance number 23-02. An ordinance rezone 5 acres at 353 East Cimarron Way and 13.31 acres immediately north along SR 36 from RR5 rural residential to commercial general.
Thank you, Chairman and council members. Darrell Anderson and Michael Presley are requesting a rezone of their property at 353 East Cimarron Way. And then north along SR 36, an additional 13.31 acres from RR5 to commercial general. The property will be accessed off of Cimarron Way from a frontage road that will be, your staff report says west, I apologize, it's on the east side, or said east, I corrected it, it's on the west side of the property. It will, when Cimarron Way is closed and 33rd Parkway is constructed, there will be a frontage road on the west side of Tooele Valley Motorsports Park, or Tooele Valley Motorsports, right? Is that what it's called? Okay. And it will connect to that. The general plan calls for commercial uses along SR 36 and for this property. Any issues of concern, as Cimarron is a narrow road, we recommend a traffic study be completed prior to any construction on the commercial properties to ensure that the road is adequate and safe for residential and commercial uses. This rezone will create a non-conforming use with the existing residential home, and the property owner is aware of that and aware of the limitations that will be created with the home, and they are in favor of moving forward. As of tonight, I've not received any response from the neighbors. Jennifer, have you received any?
I've not received any communication from the community about this.
Planning staff has completed a review of the zoning map amendment application, and the CG zoning district is a good use for this property. The general plan uses the east portion of the property along SR 36 as commercial general. So Planning Commission made a unanimous favorable recommendation to the City Council on March 28th with the following conditions. Traffic study with input from Erda City be completed prior to any commercial construction to ensure there is adequate and safe access for the residential commercial uses. And frontage road on the west side of 353 Cimarron Way be constructed prior to any construction on the site, and the traffic study to recommend the width of the frontage road. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, we went over this, didn't we? On like 2 meetings ago. To change this property to commercial. Where did we talk about that?
We may have talked about it on the phone.
Okay, seemed official to me. This is right against the highway.
This seems pretty simple to me. It fits our general plan. I was at the planning zoning meeting. No one spoke against this being commercial. There were 2 or 3 people that spoke, had some questions. Those were all addressed, and like I say, they come through unanimously. This very much seems to fit what we desire in that area.
I'm good with the planning commission recommendation.
As well.
Are you looking for a motion then?
I guess I am.
Jess, could I make a couple comments before you vote?
You're an applicant, sure.
No, would you mind reading the last condition? I
Sure.
wasn't aware of that, so let me just hear it again.
The frontage road on the west side of 353 Cimarron Way be constructed prior to any construction on the site, which you'll need for access anyways. And that the traffic study be conducted to determine the width of the frontage road.
So just a little bit of concerns with that. If we bring a frontage road off of Erda Way south, and we're actually doing construction on the extreme north, I don't know that it makes sense to force a frontage road on the Mike Presley's parcel at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you have access, so the properties that were rezoned only showed access off of Cimarron, it doesn't show it all the way through.
Yeah,
So that's why that condition was
And
placed.
so absolutely makes sense to put in that frontage road when it's appropriate with the construction on Mike's property. But let's just take Mike's property, his is 5 acres, and so if he was able to sell something right on the 36 corner, it may not make sense to force him to put that frontage road in just yet. And so I don't know that I want it quite that tightly worded, because even like on the 13 acre, if we come off of, through Joe's property off of Erda Estate, off of Erda Way, or bring a right in, right out off of 36, that frontage road over on Mike's may not make sense at that point. We'll put it in absolutely when it makes sense and is appropriate, or if a traffic study says that we need to, but I don't know that we want to be tied, so to put that in when it's, it may literally dead end at nothing at some point.
So what if we just take off the 353 Cimarron Way and just say a frontage road on the west side of the property will be constructed prior to any construction and the width be recommended by a traffic study?
Perfect.
Does that work for you?
Thank you.
I'm fine with that if you guys are okay with that.
I'd be fine with that, as long as that is,
To ensure
access
access.
comes off the frontage road.
I wonder if the planning commission had this in mind and were concerned that the entire road be constructed. I don't know, I wasn't there.
When we discussed it with the planning commission, there wasn't talk of a frontage road coming off of Erda Way. It was this parcel, the 13.31 acre parcel does not extend all the way to Erda Way, and so it's basically landlocked without the access off of Cimarron through Presley's property. That's the only reason that was worded the way it was. But if there was sufficient access off of Erda Way, I think they would be fine with that. The concern was just that it didn't show extending all the way.
The biggest part of the discussion was they wanted the frontage road to be on the west side of that property and not on the east side. They wanted it to align with the road will go to 33rd Parkway and make an intersection there and not jog around. It makes sense, but yeah, it was looking at access coming that way and not from the north. So maybe it should say that their access would come off of the frontage road, and the frontage road, when built, will be on the west side of that property. That way, the road goes where everyone agreed it should have gone. And yet they can, as long as they access it off the frontage road, we don't care which end they access it off of.
Basically, we didn't want to create a landlocked piece of commercial property.
Yeah. How do we do this? Do we approve an amendment and then we vote on the?
No, don't need, so I'll just make a motion and then we can go from there. I move that we approve ordinance 23-02, rezoning 2 parcels of property, parcels 1.01 acres and a portion of the parcel north of that is 13.31 acres from RR5 to commercial general, with the conditions that traffic study with input from Erda City be completed prior to any commercial construction to ensure there's adequate and safe access for residential and commercial uses. And access will be off a frontage road that will be on the west side of 353 East Cimarron, that will be constructed in the future.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right. We'll call the roll. Harry, Minor, Hadley,
Sure.
Kale,
Yes.
Jess votes yes, Craig,
Yes.
and Scott.
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
All right, discussion items, Stansbury Junior High School Bates Canyon Road Traffic Study Proposal. Do we have junior high school representatives here?
There's a group of us. I wish we'll get a nice projector in here one day. So the original proposal was for a large roundabout on Bates Canyon Road. The Planning Commission requested that the school district go back, have a third-party independent traffic study done to determine if that was the best solution. They came back with either a roundabout or a traffic signal. Now, the majority of Bates Canyon Road is in Tooele County, but there is a portion along the junior high that is within Erda City. So the desire is for Tooele County and Erda City to agree on what improvements are going to be completed along Bates Canyon Road due to the maintenance in the future of whatever is constructed. Since that time, the school district has discussed redrawing some of their boundaries and will be moving some of the students from the Stansbury area to the new Deseret Peak High School, which will significantly decrease the traffic on this road. Then let me go back a little bit. The original traffic study only went to 2027. They've now done it to 2035. So the roundabout recommendation has been removed in the updated traffic study. So that is much less impact to Erda City. But we already had it on the agenda to discuss, so I thought I'd bring it before you, and the school district is here and our engineer is here as well. In case you guys have any questions, and to make sure if there's any adverse effects from the school that we get those taken care of with the conditional use permit at the Planning Commission. The did bring some recommended improvements. So 2025 without the junior high would be install eastbound left turn lanes at each the high school accesses along Bates Canyon Road and stripe the southbound approach of Stallion Way and Bates Canyon Road. With the junior high will be install eastbound left turn and westbound right turn lanes at the Stallion Way Bates Canyon Road intersection. Install a two-way left turn lane along Bates Canyon Road from Stallion Way to Cambridge Way. And install northbound, eastbound, and southbound left turn lanes at the Cambridge Way Bates Canyon Road intersection. And that is in the drawing that I put on your table tonight. 2035. Without junior high, install a two-way left turn lane along Bates Canyon Road from Stallion Way to Cambridge Way. Install northbound, eastbound, and southbound left turn lanes at the Cambridge Way, Bates Canyon Road intersection. With the junior high, convert the Stallion Way, Bates Canyon Road intersection to an all-way stop-controlled intersection. Install dual northbound and eastbound left turn lanes and an eastbound right turn overlap phase at the Bates Canyon Road SR 36 intersection. Install an additional westbound lane on the north side of Bates Canyon Road from SR 36 to the East Junior High access. Restrict westbound left turns at the West Junior High access Bates Canyon Road intersection and stripe the East High School access to allow separate southbound left and right turn lanes. And then I've given you the drawing. We did ask at the county and at the Erda City Planning Commission that the school district traffic engineer look at a north-south access road, whether it be on the east or the west side of the junior high. We did have some residents show up at the Planning Commission meeting that spoke against having a road in that area, but we did ask, the Planning Commission did ask that they have their traffic engineer look at it. So a road on the east side, the advantages came back with improved connectivity for the school, but the disadvantages were junior high traffic would likely back up onto a public north-south road, additional safety concerns for students crossing the road, and it would dead end at Bates Canyon Road and Church Road and would not be extended further. Traffic study came back and said if we're going to do a north-south road, Rabbit Lane is the best location. The advantages, it would alleviate some congestion on SR 36, would have improved connectivity for the school and the community. It ties into the existing collector grid system in the area. It is shown on your transportation master plan as being a future connectivity road that would connect to 1200 West. Drawbacks are it removes private access function of the existing lane as a trail. It is anticipated that by 2035, traffic from Erda Junior High School will contribute to approximately 6% of the total traffic at the Bates Canyon Road SR 36 intersection, 27% of the total traffic on Bates Canyon Road. And they are recommending, well, it is recommended that they put pedestrian crossings at Bates Canyon Road routed to Stallion Way. The school does intend to do that. So there may be some sign impact within Erda city limits. I would anticipate most of it is going to be within the county. So the county met with the school district on Monday, requested them to look at the north-south, which they have done, and brought back their recommendation to us. We also asked the school district to provide to us what their request is on Bates Canyon Road of the county or of Erda city. It shows quite a bit of off-site improvement needing to be done on Bates Canyon Road, so we asked them to look at that and decide if they're going to request that the county pay for it or if the school district intends to pay for it. And then there are some significant changes at the Bates Canyon Road SR 36 intersection, so we've asked the school district to have a brief discussion with UDOT to see if that's going to be feasible, and if not, what happens to that intersection if they are not in agreement with what the traffic study shows. So I do have the school district here as well as the county engineer if you guys have any questions of any of us. Wanted to get this before you just because it is a big impact to your community, so wanted to make sure you guys are all on board with. We cannot deny construction of the school. All we can do is mitigate any adverse impacts it may have on the neighboring properties, and we want to make sure we get that right. We have one chance.
Right now, we have a ton of traffic on Thomas Lane and Church Road going to the high school. I think any additional addition of a school is gonna add to that. I really like the idea of a north-south road. But it would be difficult to construct. And I don't wanna see us get rid of our only trail in Erda. I guess it's something we just gotta keep looking at.
So just for the record, there is no conversation currently about constructing Rabbit Lane.
Correct. That was just a recommendation that came back.
It's not wide enough, is it? There's not enough room for a road there, is there?
You'd have to pipe the ditch and there'd be some right-of-way acquisition that would have to be
I have,
done. As with any new road, unless a developer comes in and wants to develop along the road, then you can require them to do the improvements.
but there's nothing you need from us tonight.
Just a discussion. I just wanted to make sure if you guys had any concerns that we got them addressed at the planning commission. Absolutely. Okay. So half of Bates is in Erda City, half is in Toledo County.
This is what they give us, it shows both those parts. All part of the same.
Any questions?
Did you have anything you wanted to add? That I missed?
Not too much, I can come up if you want.
All your points.
I can add one clarification of the numbers. I thought I'd sent it in information today, but it looks like it didn't get attached. What we had done, we took the existing schools that will feed that, so Old Mill Elementary, Stansbury Park, and Rose Springs, and took the third through sixth grade, so 4 grade levels, and added their population up and used our population estimates that we have seen and extended that out. We also added a 20% at that point because there are charter school students that currently don't have they're in elementary, but we get them back when they come into secondary. So we added 20% as well. And so what that did show was it's about 4 years till we get to the same number of students who are currently at the high school when you add both of them together, 4 years after we open it up. So there is quite a significant reduction. We didn't have any of that taken into account when we did the initial traffic study. So that's where the reduced numbers come. But yeah, so I think Rochelle did a good job explaining everything else, but
Also, the majority of the students will be bused to the junior high because there is not a safe walking route. So that should alleviate some of the traffic.
Is that how you got away from the roundabout?
Yeah, what was the
Is
story?
by the reduced numbers?
What's the story on the round?
they had initially kept the same numbers at Stansbury High of 2,200 students and had over 1,200 students at the junior high in their estimates, where I believe the numbers, I don't have them. We're going to be on opening day at Stansbury High. On the high end is closer to 1,400. And I was just talking to Dr. Sarah Jarnigan, our area director. Their goal is to have that school be around 1,200 students in the ideal. So just on the Stansbury High, that would be about a reduction of 1,000 students. And we had about 1,200 students planned at the junior high, where that school will always be basically half of the high school because it's 4 grades versus 2 grades. So we were able to, we cut out 1,500 to about 1,500 students to 2,000 students that in the initial projection that aren't going to be there.
So how does that impact the turnaround?
The roundabout.
The roundabout, yeah.
The biggest impact, the intersection that was in the biggest failure was that east connection that was mostly on our property. They had a queue of over 1,200 feet, and so that showed a person trying to turn left would be backed up all the way through the property and then back out onto Bates Canyon Road. In the new traffic study, it's still in a failure intersection, but it fails on our side, and the queue gets to be about 300 feet long. I think 11 cars is what they had said before it would clear itself. And so that's where the roundabout came in. Because there was so many students projected on the junior high site, it just backed up onto Bates Canyon Road. With the more accurate numbers, that backup doesn't push onto the public road. It stays on our property, and it doesn't impact the east-west traffic on Bates Canyon. So that's why the roundabout did go away. It was there just to get people off of our property when there were almost double the number of students that they were planning on. And that was just not great information that we provided them a year ago before we developed boundaries and some other things. And
So how much does that save by not putting that roundabout in?
we didn't really have a cost estimate yet because we were trying to get this out to bid. Went out to bid with pretty close to the recommendations here. There's a little more asphalt on the recommendations here than we had planned. So we didn't have a contractor on board for an estimate. So I don't know how much that roundabout would have cost. It wouldn't have been cheap.
Pricey.
I mean, we were ballparking in, $1 million+ to be able to install that.
You've got to put lighting on them and striping, and they have to be maintained. And so that was the question, is who's going to maintain the roundabout and who's going to pay for the lighting, and that kind of goes
I want
away.
to see another Erda Way and Excelsior problem like we have now.
I arguably get more complaints, comments about the traffic at a school in Erda currently, along Erda Way, than maybe arguably anything else in Erda. So I think we're trying to not have another problem such as
And that wasn't obviously not our problem, but we're very aware of it. I've tried to drive down that. And so at the beginning, like I think I mentioned back in December when I was before you, that's the one reason we did put so much off-site parking. I believe that's similar to the solution that Excelsior is looking at doing, is to get a place for people to get off to wait. And so that's why we do have a lot of parking. I mean, we double or triple the needed parking stalls, plus there's thousands of feet of actual staging room for parents to get off of the public road, because it is a mess, and schools are, there's the 45-minute window twice a day that are very busy, and then it's pretty quiet the rest of the day. But that's.
So I guess my question is, you're opening a new high school, and that'll drop the population at the Stansbury High School significantly. But with the growth we're experiencing, what's to stop it from being back at that same population in 5 years? And having
Part of the thing that
back into right where your
Right.
initial study was at.
One of the things that does help is having that extra school gives us more capacity for growth. So, right now we have 3 schools in the valley, Grantsville, Tooele, and Stansbury, that have to have enough students to open up a new high school. So each of those schools are over capacity by 500 students to 700 students. So then you take those 500 students to 700 students, then you get that 1,500 students that can fill a new high school. So as we open a 4th high school, now once those schools get to 300 above capacity, we have enough for a new high school. It does give us some more kind of pressure relief areas as we do grow, because everybody's aware there is a lot of growth happening in the community, especially in the north end of the valley. So that's one thing that does help, just having that additional school to give us some more room and some more time to continue to not have one school bear all that burden, or 2 schools, but we can spread that out. I believe it was 16 years between Stansbury High and when Deseret Peak will open. We're working on our master plan now to kind of plan out the next, long-term planning. So we don't have the exact projection of the new high school, but it would be probably in that, opening in that 8 to 10 years. And that's where the traffic study goes into. We would be at that 10-year mark. They're currently projecting about 400 students more than is, sorry, 400 more students in 10 years in that area than there is today. And I believe that we'll have a new high school somewhere, increased grants, whatever it is, to try to offset that. Because yeah, it is a concern that the kids are coming, people are having kids, which is great. But we don't want to get back to Stansbury. It's definitely not ideal. We want to provide quality education, and that's best done when their class numbers are small. And so that's our goal, is to keep them small. And I can't speak to all of that and from my part of the district. But
I'd like to beat you at the bat, but I believe the traffic study that we had you pay for and we controlled says you don't need a roundabout.
So you probably don't know this, but I'm gonna ask anyway. So one of the things about Excelsior and the problem it creates on Erda Way is every single student is hauled in a personal car to those schools, but you'll have busing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any figures about how many people, how many kids are gonna be able to walk and how many are gonna have to be driven if they don't ride a bus?
Do you have statistics on which might be driven in as opposed to riding the bus?
I don't. I know it's a 2-mile radius, that anyone outside of that 2-mile radius is bus eligible. So north of, I'm not sure, 138, I'm not sure what it is now, over by Old Mill, by the grist mill, Lake Point, those would be bused. And then that 2-mile radius. As far as numbers, I don't currently know. I know right now that we have about 11 buses that go to Clark Johnson Junior High, and I believe it was 7 of those come from the Stansbury area. It have been 8. And so we anticipate, in Tooele that congestion will lessen, but it wouldn't be those full 7 or 8 buses because a lot of those students would be within the walking distance. So that's one thing I don't have off the top of my head. I could gather that if needed and talk to our transportation department and our GIS specialist, and they could get us some estimates of that. But it would be, I imagine it would be pretty similar to Stansbury High. Right now there's 2,200 students. We're going to take away about the number that are going to end up at the junior high. So I think that it would, like it does show, it would be pretty similar because it's the same population, if not a little bit more condensed because it doesn't go clear into Tooele like it currently does.
Okay.
Corey, you showed up. You have anything you really want to say?
Study is pretty clear.
He's my bodyguard.
Yeah. It's no longer needed, so that saves, I think, traffic light is $1.5 million. So the rent is a little, it's less than that, but it does save a couple million on both options. So with the new numbers.
It was a big roundabout. Is there any other questions we can answer? Any concerns you have that you want to make sure the planning commission addresses?
So making sure some of these things are feasible, like the communication with UDOT.
And we have spoke with them. I've received preliminary emails back from them. I did send them information 3 times last year without any response, just letting them know. But our traffic engineer got us in touch with somebody else, and we started those conversations. And right now, the preliminary conversations is if the county's okay with it, they're okay with it, whatever. So, but we just started those. I think I heard back Tuesday from them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corey's got something.
Well, and we had looked at Rabbit Lane, since it doesn't line up perfectly with Stallion Way, majority of the Rabbit Lane to get those alignments would stay all up to the north. So the best way would be come down the side of it. So that lane could,
The
Rabbit
trail
Lane
would
could-
stay,
most
yeah.
of it could stay. It's in front of her house is where it would have to kick over, but that is most of that trail could stay, to line up better with Stallion Way. So that is really good. I mean, that's the best place to keep traffic going.
Through my front yard.
Yeah,
That's your best.
there's not enough room.
No, you'd have to go around.
No, he's saying through your backyard.
That'll make you feel better.
There's a million. There's a million that have to save.
No, that doesn't stop the rain.
That's,
There's nothing.
I'm not saying that.
I think what we're saying is Rabbit Lane only gets built when you decide to develop and sell out. That's when Rabbit Lane becomes a road, is when you decide that we're done and you sell it to someone and they put houses in there. There's no intention of building Rabbit Lane into a road.
Correct.
I agree with that.
Just showing it can happen when the time comes that it's needed. Yeah.
All right, PID policy.
Could you just restate what you just said about the Rabbit Lane thing? No intention of what?
The
No,
city,
Judy was here.
oh yeah, Judy, cute little thing, she's just hiding over there behind that.
Well, I'm concerned, you know.
The city and the school district have no intention of building Rabbit Lane into a road. The only,
They were bringing it up.
the planning commission asked them to look at north-south connectors and how it would connect best. And so they did. They had the engineers look at it, of a couple different options of how to go north and south. And they said, this will be the best option when someone decides to develop and build. Just like if it went on the east side of the school, we could force them to build to the school property line, but they can never go further than that until you decide to develop the old Vorwaller piece and the Wayland piece. And as those are sold and you decide to develop them, that's when the road would go through, and not before
The
that.
Wayland's getting developed. The Vorwaller one will never be developed.
Well, if that's the case, the road will never go through there.
Can I have your sign on that? Because, you know, when this all happened, these trails come through here, that was a set thing. We were gonna have a trail to make this a rural community that everything would connect. And now we're becoming Harriman and Salt Lake City, and pretty soon there won't be a trail, except where my cows go up the side of the road. And that's sad. We're ruining Erda. We are ruining Erda that I knew. And maybe nobody else cares about that, but I do, and so does my family. And I want people to know that.
I think there are several people seated up here that feel that way too.
That's my feeling. So if they want to hate me, they can hate me.
Thank you, Judy. All right, we'll invite those that want to discuss the PID policy items up.
Guess that's me.
I believe you raised probably 3 concerns about their letter of intent on the PID policy. So let me address those. One of the problems with the PID, well, not a problem, but one of the requirements of PID is everybody in that PID have the same tax rate. And they have a residential and a commercial, and we have a lower rate cap for residential and a higher cap rate for commercial. And so they're probably going to have to do 2 PIDs, one for the commercial, so it'll have the same tax rate, won't exceed that cap, and then one for the residential, or maybe even 2 for the residential, so it won't exceed that cap rate. Is that pretty straightforward? There's also a question about the amount of money they were asking for. We haven't seen a phasing plan. We don't know where that money's gonna go yet. We're not even sure we want a date with them yet. I mean, that's where we are there. And there's also a fair amount of discussion that we wanted the PID paid off at title transfer. Either a building permit, which is probably a little early, but when the people bought the property, that lien comes off. And so they've discussed doing two types of bonds to accommodate that. So I think that's about where we are. The big elephant in the room that I keep pushing back on is I can't give an opinion why the lawsuit's pending. And if I can't give an opinion, no one's gonna buy the bonds.
Does the dissolution count too?
The what?
Dissolve? You got the one guy trying to do dissolve this too.
The opinion doesn't deal with potential dissolutions. Was that about it, Craig? Is that pretty straightforward?
Yeah, I think those were the concerns or the issues that the committee had and we're looking to address. And we did talk that their phasing plan, they would have to be in the next step. My mind's just gone blank.
Governing document.
Yeah, governing document would require that the phasing all be drawn out and put out in that. The multiple PIDs, I don't know I think our policy would allow for one application that had multiple PIDs in it, that could have one for commercial, one for residential, and the overall application be deemed as one, because we did have requirements in there that for any kind of a mill levy, you had to have a commercial aspect to it. And so I think the one application would cover the multiple PIDs that they might require. I have had some discussions with them, and because as you all know, when they said $180 million, I went, there's no way that's ever gonna fly. And in our discussions and meetings with them, it's really a $20 million capital improvements, and then the rest of it is a rotating account that will be paid off with the special assessment bonds, that when we do a 200 home project, that all gets paid off before another one is created or allowed. And it's all paid off with special assessments that get paid off when the house is purchased, so it never goes to the end user. And I think we talked a lot about that they wouldn't have a tax burden or an overwhelming tax burden hanging over their heads, that these things would be paid off as they went, so the end user would never be holding to that. And so looking at it under that microscope, through that lens, the $180 million is what's gonna cost them to build this whole project. Well, they have a cushion in it. I think it was 160 with a 20 million cushion for incidentals, but they'll never take a loan for 160 or 80 million. They'll be doing those in small 10 or 20 million dollar increments as they build each phase. And I think all that would have to be laid out in the governing document.
Well, if it wasn't, we'd make sure it was in there.
Yeah, well, it would definitely not be approved until it was all in there. We've talked quite a bit, and SPID's engineer is here to talk about some of these things tonight, the upsizing of lines and what requirements we would want them to do as far as upsizing. He's here to explain the needs and how things should fit and what SPID's position might be on some of this. So thanks for coming, Brendan, and can't wait to hear what you have to
I didn't know I was gonna give a presentation, but I can explain some things.
Well, I assumed you were still lit up there.
And Brett Palmer's here too, district manager.
Oh, yeah,
So
Brett's
he
hiding over there by Judy. I can't see Brett from here.
officially represent the district, but
So we all right? I mean, to proceed, I don't wanna go too far on it until we resolve that litigation. Because everybody's wasting their time, really.
Yeah, we talked about that some. I told them if you move forward, it would be at the risk. And we talked about this with Zions. It's entirely possible they could go through this whole process and not be able to sell their bonds because the city's has litigation against it. I look at that and say that's their risk. If they want to move forward, I'm fine with that. With any kind of luck, that litigation's long gone before any of these bonds go out anyway.
Then one more issue, Marcus, who was basically the lead from Zions, is no longer at Zions. So we'll have to get either a new lead from Zions or go with Marcus, and he went to a new company, and I'm not familiar with them, as a government finance entity.
Yeah, I forwarded that on to you, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah, so Marcus, the gentleman's come and presented, taught us about PIDs, helped write our PID policy with us. Had an opportunity to leave Zions and go to a rather large southeastern regional public financial, but they're expanding into the western market. So we can either choose to stay with Zions, who is very well known in this area, or we could continue using Marcus with a company that's not known like Zions in this area. I think that should be a decision for this council to make.
Has anybody met the new guy from Zions?
I don't think we have a new guy.
I have not been approached by anybody from Zions.
I would put a lot of weight on that. What's this new guy like?
Yeah, I don't know who the new guy from Zions is.
Yeah.
You're smiling, you know.
Yeah, I know who it is, yeah. His name's Jonathan Moore.
Well, I don't think Jonathan Ward himself's gonna come out and do it, but if he would, that would be okay.
So you know him?
Yeah.
Will we like him?
You will.
I'll let you guys make that decision.
Yeah, you'll like him. He's a good guy.
Is he as knowledgeable about these PIDs as Marcus was?
Yes.
Well, then, I say we stay with Zions.
But I'm surprised no one's called me or chased me. Surprises me a little bit, but
It's a little bit of a surprise that nobody's reached out.
so if somebody here wants Jonathan Ward to call me,
Thank you, John. Should we?
Is it okay if I make some comments?
Yes.
Okay, so Sam Elder from DA Davidson, we would be the underwriter of the bonds for public infrastructure district to raise the dollars to do this. I just wanted to clarify on, in terms of the opinion that would be needed, it would come from bond counsel, which would be Gilmore Bell, who would need to provide the opinion of the validity of the bonds being tax exempt. They wouldn't give that opinion unless we got the PID ratified through the county while there was a lawsuit outstanding. So if you guys approved it, we would still need to go get that ratified by Tooele County before we could go out and issue bonds. And so for us, it's easier if the city, who has the jurisdiction over the creation of the PIDs at this point in time, approves it, then it gives us a reason to go to the county and say, we got the city to approve the PIDs. Now we just need you to ratify it in case the lawsuit goes through. The lawsuit falls off, everything's good. In that particular instance, Gilmore and Bell could provide their opinion and we could go issue the debt. So it's just, from our perspective, moving the process along to try to get the PIDs created gives us a reason to approach the county to ask them to ratify this.
Thank you.
And if you have any additional questions as you go through it, I'm here to help answer anything for you.
Great.
Guess
Brendan, you're up to tell us about.
Part is this? Is this still on the pit?
Yeah,
Yes.
this is Stansbury Park Improvement District.
Yes, I represent Stansbury Park Improvement District as their engineer.
What are your name?
I'm Brendan Thorpe. I don't know how much that you know about the past history of utility service, sewer and water in the Erda area outside of Stansbury Park. So I'll just, since this is related to the PID that you've been discussing and entertaining, I'll just introduce the concept of the two pieces of infrastructure that have been proposed to Stansbury Park Improvement District by the applicant that you're working with. So the image that you see here on the screen deals with the sewer system. Of course, everything outside of Stansbury Park Improvement District boundary is something that Stansbury Park doesn't normally serve without a special request and an annexation. Normally, when an annexation occurs with Stansbury Park Improvement District, it triggers on a development this large. It triggers a number of things. Studies have to be done to look at the development that is in question, but also Stansbury Park has a desire to also make sure that other properties other than just specific development are also considered, as does the state of Utah. The Division of Water Quality also has written in their rules that we're required to evaluate and consider sewer service of a service area, which is somewhat loosely defined and defined by the entities who are considering this. But nonetheless, the state of Utah requires us to consider in that service area that a system or a line is sized for either a 50-year build-out period or to serve that whole tributary area, whichever comes first. And so that's what we have been asked to do by the applicant, is to begin the process of master planning this area so that we can determine the line, in this particular case, the sewer size. So what's shown here in color is a service area that is fully contained in Erda City. And this has been the result of many iterations of multiple applicants over the years, over the past few years, I should say. So what this shows is a revised and refined service area. The purple, the yellow, and the blue they're just color coded for east, central, and west areas, but they comprise the total service area that we've considered. And the lines there, the blue lines, this line right here is what we define as the trunk line, or the main line that would serve all of the colors that you see there. There's a certain line size that Ochre Point is required to build if the line were just to serve them, which is the area here. I'm sure you know this, but this is the Ochre Point area. And if the line were just to serve that alone, there would be a certain line size, approximately 15 inches. And they would ultimately be responsible to construct and build that to serve theirs. And then what we consider is an upsize cost from 15 to some other diameter pipe size that would carry the capacity of the service area at large. And so what that looks like at this point is going from a 15 to an 18 and then graduating in size down till we get to that dashed green line, and that's what we call the sewer trunk line. And so with SPID isn't necessarily concerned about how the PID works, and we don't want to come and try to get into the middle of that, but simply to say that in the discussions with the Stansbury Park Improvement District Board, it is not the intent of the board to impose impact fees to either build the underlying line size for Ochre Point or to fund through impact fees the upsize cost of the line to serve the service area that you see. And so that is something that I think the applicant is hoping that you will consider, is to explore ways to include both the underlying line size and the upsize into the PID. And so we're the technical arm that just considers how to serve sewer and leave the funding options for you to consider.
Repeat what you're talking about, the annexation part, so does the development want to annex these into?
So Stansbury Park is a political body, and so as an entity that has taxing power, and so we have, anytime a property seeks service that is outside of our political boundary, they have to be annexed into the district, similar to what would have to happen if somebody were to want to annex into your city boundary, your municipal boundary. So in order to provide service for Ochre Point, they have to come and ask for a request for annexation into the district for sewer and water service.
So that's a new item for me. How do you mean be annexed into Stansbury Park?
So it's the same annexation process if they were to come to you and ask to annex into your boundary. They would have to go through the state rules, and they would have to prepare an annexation plat and go to the lieutenant governor's office and have that authorized for annexation.
It's supposed to affect the city boundaries. It doesn't
Okay,
affect the city.
that's what I was gonna say. If we annex property down where the gravel pit is,
Okay, yeah, so the Stansbury Park Improvement District's boundary is entirely independent of your boundary, of your political boundary. A service district does not have to have a contiguous, nice, neat, adjacent boundary. We can go out and pick services, one house here, one house there. The law allows for that to happen. So the board does consider requests from time to time.
Okay.
So,
your explanation, John, is what I was looking for.
I knew that, that's why I answered it.
Scott, like Magna Water, actually services West Valley and Magna. So these taxing districts, utility districts can be in multiple cities, but they're one board.
Stansbury Service District probably already services, well, my home. I mean, I'm hooked to Stansbury Park's water. So I'm actually out of boundaries. If this changed, I would strongly consider, when they annex in behind me, going into boundary, because I'll get my water cheaper. It's something that I'll be looking at doing. Service districts service multiple cities and areas that aren't in the cities, and they cross lines, and they're special. But
just maybe to state the obvious, the district likes to plan for, as the state of Utah does, for the future. And so it is, we feel good planning policy and just good common sense to consider what happens when a line goes in, if it's not sized for some additional capacity and, with the next day, somebody comes to make a request and comes to Stansbury Park Improvement District to request for annexation of a line that goes right past their property, and then we don't like to deny that request or immediately thereupon say there's no capacity in that line. And so that's generally not good engineering practice for the district to consider lines in that way. So that's the reason that we've prepared this map in its more regional illustration here.
Just as a really, really rough, non-binding guess, what would the price difference be in putting this line in as proposed versus a 15-inch line? What
I'm
roughly? Yeah.
well, and sorry if I misspeak, Joe. You're more closer to these.
Yeah, we've been running numbers with the pit engineer, Joe White, representing Ochre Point. It's a $5 to $8 million difference, and the $3 million difference, it's 5.8, and then this trunk line right now that doesn't exist to go to serve the 50-year plan has to be a 30-inch trunk line, and that's an additional $3 million. So that's the benefit of the PID, is we can put in the 15-inch all the way to the, from here all the way to the treatment plant for about $6 million cheaper than if we do the upsize. The PID would pay for that's what the PID is asking for, is the upsize in that. And it's good planning when you go from serving 2,000 to 8,000 just by scales of economy. And that's the difference. The service area, do you have the one that just shows Ochre Point? So you can see, I guess it's here, it's hatched.
Yeah.
So it's hatched here.
Yeah.
If we did a 15-inch, that's what it services. And the PID, again, is the burden of the developer and the development. It doesn't put any burden back onto Erda City. So.
And maybe I should just, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but I think it's worth mentioning that Stansbury Park is considering a request to allow the applicant to make a temporary connection to its existing system. It has some available capacity in our system, but that capacity is in the future reserved for property owners in the district. But in the interim, it's possible to make a temporary connection there. With the understanding, contractually, I'm sure, it is to, at some point when there's a certain number of connections or a certain period of time, that this line is required because we have to pull back and free up capacity in the system. So there's really two components to the sewer system. It's the trunk line that we call in this solid line here, and then we call this the outfall line. Together, this is the full sewer line, but they are phased, and Stansbury Park has made it clear that they will not assess impact fees for either of those.
So where's that treatment plant at?
The treatment plant's right here. You can see the treatment lagoons right there.
Yeah, there's lagoons. I don't know that there's a standing treatment plant, but the lagoons with aeration.
So with the upsize, instead of just serving Ochre Point, you can serve all of the colored areas?
All of the colored areas, yeah. And they'll have to participate, right? There'll be connection fees, the cost to reimburse the PID for that, but.
Anybody that wants to do it.
Anybody that wants to, and there's no requirement. There's a misnomer in if a sewer line's within 500 feet or whatever, you're mandatory to hook up, and that's not a true case here.
No,
If you want to keep your septic, you can. If you want to keep your well, feel free.
That's one of the things I've advocated for, and I think will be required for me to vote for the PID, that there'll be as long as the PID exists and has debt, there'll be a pioneering agreement in force that when anyone else hooks on, they pay their share back to pay the PID off. Not to go to the developer, not to go to line a pocket somewhere else, but to pay the debt of the PID off. And
I mean, it makes sense. We have an opportunity to provide infrastructure that doesn't really put a burden on any other residents in the city, and serve. The water system's a little bit different, but the sewer, what's the outfall sewer capacity? Do we, on the 30-inch, it was about 8,500 or close to 10,000 people?
Like, yeah, 10, 12,000.
If we limit one flush a day, you get 15,000. Just kidding.
Any questions on the sewer? I just want to quickly show you the water, but if you have some questions, I can try to answer those. Okay. Similar, the water system is similar in principle, but it's quite a bit different in service area. The blue over there is Ochre Point. Sorry that we rotated the view here, so we're now looking at north that direction. Stansbury Park down in the lower left. The water sewer flows through gravity, so you can put one line in there and it flows, and it's pretty straightforward. Water's a little different because there are multiple components to the system. There are wells, and there are storage tanks, and then there are distribution systems and transmission systems, and so it also operates on pressure. So the service area is defined by elevation and what we call pressure zones, and so you see those green lines on the screen there. Those are each pressure zones, and so the service area for the water are defined by these green lines, and so Ochre Point actually falls in two pressure zones or two service areas, and so the service area for the water hasn't yet been fully developed, but it's similar in the idea that ideally a water system, the pipelines would be sized to be able to convey water from wells and tanks that accommodate a full demand of something that represents a larger build-out condition than just Ochre Point. It's really difficult to size them for Ochre Point in a network and then come back as things build out and build parallel lines everywhere, because those lines were not sized for fire flow conditions and for distribution transmission to and from wells and tanks and houses. So again, not to get into the details, but that's the idea and the reason why things are upsized. So the developer would be required to build ultimately a storage facility that would accommodate fire flow conditions, which is the majority of the storage capacity in a tank for a water system. One of the benefits to the city would be that only has to be built once. Once that storage capacity for fire protection is there, it serves everything, including Ochre Point. And then what comes after is the demand for the houses. And that is actually small in comparison to the 3,000 gallon per minute for 3-hour fire flow that the tank has to be sized for. So the upsize throughout Erda City in whatever service area is ultimately defined would just be to upsize any storage facilities for additional development.
Downsides to that, it takes out of the aquifers. And with the drought and everything that's going on, it's like, we need to leave as much in the ground as we can for everybody. The more you pump in, the more it's taken out.
That is a great question, and I'm not the groundwater expert on that, but yeah, that's probably a separate debate.
I know the state would be on the point of leaving as much in the aquifer as we can.
Sure.
And putting them in tanks.
But the state does also have requirements for if you as the land use authority approve development, the water has to be provided according to the rules of the state. So that's really what we're talking about here, is just the storage facilities. A well is similar. It's really hard to upsize a well because by and large you get what you get. You target a certain flow rate and you drill it and you hope you get it. Those are easy to stage and phase in because they're, maybe they come in increments of 2,000 gallons per minute and you build them as you go. Those aren't as critical. But the line sizes are fairly critical to get right when they go in the ground the first time. So those are some things to consider as we consider their application for annexation. Those are our concerns and our wishes. Have I spoken there, Brett?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else that you guys wanted me to address or maybe say? Did I hit the important stuff? Okay. Do you have any further questions for me? I appreciate the opportunity to introduce Stansbury Park Improvement District and kind of tell you where we're at on this thing.
Appreciate you taking the time to explain all this.
Put it off the cuff.
Be good.
Sure thing. Okay.
We just wanted to say from our perspective, what we were just kind of hoping for the next steps for us to be able to move forward is to be able to draft a governing document in front of you. And this is a decision that you would make with, the district advisory committee to move to that next step. But upon that, we would provide a draft of governing document where we actually start talking through the parameters and how a public infrastructure can be used for whatever you decided to approve, if that's the decision that you make. So we just want to move forward in getting that draft that you guys are looking for with all the different asks and requests that you've made to us. So the PID mapping, the infrastructure mapping, the debt limit, and be able to kind of come in and start having discussions with you on why we're asking for certain things. And so we're kind of just at a standstill at this point where we're waiting. But as soon as that is approved, we'll put a draft of the governing document in front of you to start reviewing.
As far as the PID committee, I'll let Jen speak on this because she's a member of it. I thought we were ready for a draft governing document, were we not?
Yeah, we just needed to make sure that the council would be okay with the multiple, there was just a few items that we addressed tonight. The council needed to be aware that because of how we drafted our PID policy, that they were gonna have to do things different than what we might have expected.
There would be multiple PIDs within the one application.
We just wanted to get the council's go-ahead or approval or understanding that that's what would be happening and get clarification on those so we could send it back to them so they could send the governing document or, yeah. Ready for that, just one clarification on those items.
I think it's fair to say that I'm a big supporter of this and because of what it'll bring to the city. One of the things our planning commission has thrown out in their meetings is that they want to require all new subdivisions to hook to sewer. Well, this puts somewhat availability of sewer systems. There's real potential for benefit to the people who live here in fire protection. I mean, my neighbor's house burnt to the ground, and it was only because they showed up with a pumper truck with 4,000 gallons of water in it, and when that water was gone, so was the house. It just, I mean, it went up in flames. There was not water there available to protect it. Approving a PID, not only does it bring immediate financial to the city, it would put the light in on the highway, bring the frontage road up, and it would push our commercial along that highway 8 years ahead.
How does it bring financial to
If
us?
we approve the PID, we get a paycheck. We get 2 checks, one for approving it and another one for the money. We either get it now or we wait until they build, I think it's unit 700.
Well, that one was passed. It was like we had to have done it by August of last year, according to the estoppel.
The PID approval.
I know I'm right. I got it.
I'll bet we can work that through where the application wasn't made.
Well, we just got to remember that what the whole purpose of a PID was designed for was when it was, Congress passed it in 2019. It was to incentivize developers to take a lot of the strain financially off of them so they could expedite development because we needed houses and stuff like that. It's like free money. It maximizes their profits. And so it's something they don't have to pay back. The other people do, but the developers themselves don't. So
I wouldn't characterize it as free money, but I believe you're right. It was a financial tool that was put in place by the legislature to further development. You're 100% right on that, and it helps eliminate some of the risk. But there's also clear benefits to the cities, including ours, to approve them. Like I say, that light and that frontage road and that commercial won't be built anytime soon without a PID. And if we want some of those commercial things to come into our city, this is gonna be one of the ways we can do that. As long as there's some rails put up and some things put in place, so it's not taken advantage of.
well, we just gotta be careful, because I know of an incident where a development got a PID, and then they spent the money, and then went back to the city, because they were supposed to put in like a clubhouse and a park. Well, they held that to the end, so they went back to the city for more money, because they'd spent their PID money, and the city said no. So then the developers went back to the residents and said, sorry, the city said no, so we can't finish your development.
You know, someone didn't do a very good job of
That's
proving
what
the
I mean.
PID.
You gotta be careful when you're,
That sounds like a breach of contract. What do you think, John, if they spent the PID money for other than what it was designated, it'd be a breach of contract, right?
Yeah, I don't know enough about this situation to give comment.
But you're saying it can't be done.
You can't spend public infrastructure dollars on anything other than public infrastructure, and that's what's deeded over to a public entity. So what we're outlining in the petition in the LOI is that there's $180 million of public infrastructure that we're anticipating. If that comes in at $100 million, you could only raise $100 million. You can't raise 180 because you only can use it for qualified expenses, and that is signed off from the city. You can't deed anything to the city without the city's approval. So you can't get it, you can't requisition the funds from the trustee at a national bank and pull that money unless you get approval from the city and from a third-party engineer and verifying that the infrastructure itself is eligible public infrastructure.
Okay, that's good to know.
So within this too, there's market conditions, right? So even if you ask for a debt cap of $180 million, the market only allows what the market will accept in terms of their ability to provide debt. And so there's no, in this particular instance, based on our initial plans, we don't anticipate being able to raise all the public infrastructure dollars for this project. It would only cover a portion. We're just saying in case the market would accept it, let us do it, basically. But this tool was never in place to cover all public infrastructure. It's limited in its capacity to be able to do that.
We get a better look at this in the draft governing document, right?
Yeah, so we'll outline once again all the infrastructure, right? Each of the line items that we anticipate to spend the dollars on. And then we'll show you financing plans that outline how many dollars we're gonna raise with different methods. The property tax bond versus the special assessment bond. And show you that we're limited already by the market conditions and by the property tax limitations. If we want to further constrain it, that's fine. The reason why you're asking for more too is because there's project that's in the annexation area, which the developer could potentially take down at some point in time in the future. If they wanted to annex that property in, they could, and they want the capacity to be able to finance the infrastructure for that project as well. But you have to have 100% property owner consent in order to be part of a PID. So anyone who doesn't want to be part of it can say no.
And this original ask did have a lot more than Ochre Point in it. There was a lot of property beyond the initial boundaries of Ochre Point in that.
Yeah, for example, the property tax at, let's say, 5 mils on the residential component is only going to raise you like $15 million on 1,200 homes, right? Every one of these homes is going to be a primary home, like most likely. You're not going to have many secondary homes, if any. And then so you get that property tax reduction. And by the time you multiply a 0.5% of extra property taxes, it's not going to raise you a significant amount of dollars. So you're going to be constrained by the property tax limitation.
So just for the record, what is standing in the way before we see this draft governing document?
We just haven't got approval from the district advisory committee to put a governing document in front of you. And so we just been waiting. And so we've been at a standstill. So we just want to put something in front of you to start having discussions, right? We can't get into the specifics of anything and show you exactly how it works without actually putting something in front of you to look at.
So a simple approval from the advisory board
will put us to the next step. And at that point, we'll need to be answering your questions and making sure that you guys are clear on what you're voting on in the end, right? And that's what we want to be helpful for in explaining.
Does the advisory board have a next meeting date or something?
We don't. I think a little bit of that is steered by Marcus going to a different person. We don't know the new person that we're working with science. Because most communication has been through me. Like the PID advisory board puts together a response. They verify it with their lawyers and they send it to me, and then I will send it to them from the city itself. And we did send one. We had a few adjustments that needed to be made. Those adjustments and different signatures that they needed to have because we first had to sign off on the letter of intent and that it was correct and had all of the things that we need to have in there. There were a few minor corrections that needed to be made, and we sent that back. And then we had a second meeting where we discussed a few more of these particular items, and we were getting ready to draft a response back when a few hiccups have come, like Marcus isn't there, and he was the one, him and his board were the ones that would drafted the response. So John and I need to figure out our response to you.
And we're by no means, we understand, like you guys have never seen anything like this before. It's being presented in front of you as a council, it's new. And so we totally understand. We just want to be here to help answer questions when you do have them so we can push it to the next step as appropriate. So we no problems on our end. We're just trying to get it to the next step. And so we just want to make that.
The advisory board wanted it here before the city council. So the city council was updated and get any feedback from the city council at this stage.
Just a reminder, Kel's on that too, and if they can be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that'd help him be able to attend.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are we ready to move on?
Is there any questions that didn't get answered, John, or need answered? Okay.
No, we just need a financial advisor.
All right, Tooele County Chapter 9 PUD ordinance. You gonna lead us off, John?
Yeah.
So, the planning commission gave Erda Estates a 1-year extension, and they are vested in old chapter 9, which is fairly confusing.
Old chapter 9, not good old chapter 9.
Good old?
Not good old.
Oh, older chapter 9. I just wanted to tell you that there's going to have to be a lot of interpretation of that. I just wanted to alert you to that. Make sure you're okay with that, because it's internally inconsistent in and of itself. So we're going to have to do some reaching. And I guess the reaching will be done by me and Rochelle, the Planning Commission.
Sounds like it.
We'll run our proposals.
Sounds like the planning commission has many, if not most, or all of the administrative decisions regarding chapter.
Yes.
As is written in chapter.
Yes. I had a wild thought. Is Daryl here? No. A wild thought. What if we were to adopt a new PUD ordinance that's maybe a little clearer? I'm wondering if he would be willing to agree to that.
Is it just me, or does that sound like a lot of work?
It's just a thought, a wild thought. Is it something worth chasing?
Probably ask to answer that for him. It depends on what it says.
I think I made it very clear, I want to work with Erda City.
Yes.
Well, I have to understand where we're going.
How long would it take though to get a whole new one?
It'd probably be longer than trying, the question is, I don't know if it'll be longer than trying to interpret the old chapter 9, or it's a better animal. I don't know.
So I know for a fact that someone drafted a PUD ordinance.
Oh, really?
I have not seen it. I have never seen it, but I know that there is a draft somewhere.
That was chapter 30, though. That was the old county one.
I'll send it to you, John, to look at it.
Okay. So it's,
Know that it allows an increase in density, though. I think it's more of a cluster, more of an.
well, that's what a PUD is a clustering.
Anyways, I'll send it to you.
Talking about the old Twilla County, chapter 30,
Chapter 9.
all the,
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just wanted to get your blessing and know what's going to be happening.
We'll be looking at possible replacement, but we'll be allowing the applicant to move forward under the old chapter 9.
Yeah.
As is.
Yeah, I'll look at this when it happens to exist.
Okay. Anything else on this,
well, would it be easier just to keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff on chapter 9?
Well, the problem is, it is what it is. I don't know if we can amend it.
I don't
It
know.
doesn't exist. We can amend it, can't we?
Well, it doesn't exist, but I have a copy of it right here.
I'm not sure what good stuff there was in chapter 9. It went round and round, and like I say, it was confusing. The approval process left a few steps out that it probably shouldn't have. Yeah, starting over with something else would probably be better than trying to fix that. If you, well, they say we could send it to planning and zoning, but we can't.
We'll let John look at it and see what he thinks.
Is that all right then?
That one's always on your mind, Craig.
Every time I get a chance to throw it out, I'm going,
You want to send planned communities.
I just have one question on Rabbit Lane. If you'd give me 1 minute.
go ahead, Joe.
When we did Rabbit Lane, we worked with the county to make it a trail. It was supposed to be a trail, and I'm not sure all the dynamics that go into it. It's a really cool place, one of the last trails that exist. But maybe they could look at the west side of Perry Homes. There's a gap between Perry Homes and the school that I think we could take all the way to Church Road. And that would be much better than Rabbit Lane. And maybe not, maybe I'm speaking out of turn because I just see it as easier and less intrusive on those owners that have planned on that being a trail the whole time. I paid for the trail from Perry Homes to Holiday Oil, and it was like, just to do that was really hard, just to get that done. But I think the more trails we have, the better off we'll be. And so I see what you're saying about it. The trail won't leave, but maybe that west side is better to look at.
Looked at that,
Oh, you have?
you on that.
Okay, I'll get with you.
What the-
Anyway,
What the traffic
Both,
engineer.
both places are good. I was just saying, if whoever owns it wants to develop it, they could leave the trail if they wanted to.
I probably misunderstood that.
Yeah. But it would have to be whoever owns that property, whenever they want to develop it, we could figure a way to keep the trail. So.
All right. Okay, moving right along, Erda Railroad.
So that's me again. Got a letter from the EP, there you go. Actually from a federal administration that runs railroads.
Surface Transportation Board.
Right. So we have to do something. I just want to make sure that it just doesn't die because it's probably worth doing, being a member of that committee.
They are asking for one person.
Right. And I would assume it'd be one of you guys.
Everyone's looking at you, Terry.
Well, let me read what this letter that they sent though is really, it's just the environmental analysis. And it really just talks about if there's any historical properties or venue or something that we can claim. The only problem is, the only thing that possibly could be of historical value would be the Marshall Crossing, which would be railroads. So it's kind of like, so as a consulting part, it just means because we're representatives of a local government with jurisdiction over the area which the effects any undertaking may occur, is entitled to participate as a consulting party under provisions of the federal law 106, blah, blah, blah. So here is our options. It says, please check all the appropriate responses apply from this list. One, as the city, this is a governing body. One, we have no interest associated with the STR's proposed rail line, and further consultation with our organization is not required. The next one is we want to continue to receive project information by mail and participate in the public involvement process. The next one, we have an interest in the proposed rail line and want to participate as a consulting party in section 106 of the NHPA process. And the last one is we have included comments regarding potential historic properties in the projected area and or potentially impacts to historic properties on the back of this form or on additional sheets.
Which rail is this? I know.
The Burmester one, the one that goes from Burmester and goes out in the flats and stops there by west of the Sheep Lane. And they have a little rail yard right there. I got a copy of the line right here if you want to see it.
Yeah, Savage.
So I guess all we gotta do is check any boxes that apply and then get back with them.
It seems to me like we have interest in it. Maybe not interest in it happening, but interest in whether or not it happens. And I think we should, anytime we can be in a consulting position.
I can see us probably checking two boxes. One box would be that we can hang out as the consulting party, and also we want to continue to receive project information by mail and participate in the public involvement process.
One of the things with this is it proposes an at rate on 138. So you may want to be involved.
But this is the historical part right here, right now, but I'm sure it'll go out of the environment stage and into the process of laying the rails. Or
It's your call, whatever you want to do. If you want to be involved, if not.
I think we should be involved in those two. Terry and I talked about this last week. Yeah, if we say, no, we don't want to be involved, it's kind of like saying, go ahead and do whatever you want. And we don't want that to happen.
Anytime something big's happening in the city, and this would be big to the people on that side of the city, we should be involved.
So if we're gonna have a consulting party, we have to give them a name, and I'd like to give Terry first shot at that, since this is his backyard.
I agree.
No pressure, Terry, but 4 people are looking at you.
You just,
sheet not full yet. I guess I can throw one more thing on there.
you just need one name, or do you need a couple of names?
Okay, they want one name.
So I wonder if 2 of us could attend those meetings or whatever, or if just one person can go to it.
I don't see why not.
Well, I'm sure one will be the point of contact, and then whoever wants to go can go.
Have a committee assigned to this.
Well, I don't know if it's the railroad come under roads.
I would want to be there.
Terry, at the bottom of page 4, they're asking for a name, phone number,
Email signed and
signature,
dated.
of
Please
the
email to
designated
Alan Tuttle.
contact. So if you're willing to do that,
You can fill out all that stuff and send it back.
I would need you to fill it out, because it wants your signature.
It says printed.
Signed.
Okay. You want me to do it now? Or you want me to do the whole thing?
All right. Beacon House Communications.
Okay, you're familiar with Beacon House. I sent them a letter saying, there's more information. The experts that you identified were not experts, and there's some numbers don't make sense. So they have responded. And did everybody get a copy of it, or just Craig?
I saw it.
I think you sent an email.
Okay.
You said it's whole city council, yeah.
Okay. What they did is they added some resumes of supposedly the experts, and I say supposedly, so you probably know where I'm going, of the experts that give testimony that this is a therapeutic, the number of people they need for therapeutic purposes. And one of them is Dr. Brent Blazer, but I don't see his opinion in the stuff anywhere, so I don't know why they attached him. They had Hannah Laws give some opinion. She's a registered nurse and is in business of providing this information. And then one of the experts they proposed is a Preston Dixon. They gave a little story of him, but I don't know if that qualifies him to be an expert. I've seen better stuff than this for them wanting to satisfy or meet the requirements of what I would call an expert in the area. Then they responded to the financials, and I basically just identified a couple of concerns. I didn't look through everything in there. I didn't, say, is the utility charge accurate? And I didn't hire an accountant or an expert to review these. Give me a second when I turn to that. The 2 things that I had questioned was the rental amount, and I questioned the insurance. And on the rental amount, they said that if,
Isn't she a real estate person and that's what they based the rental amount on?
yeah, they had real estate agent. And then they had an insurance quote. I mean, the problem is at some point in time, we may find ourselves in court. But at this point, if I'm the judge, I don't think they've met their burden yet. But if I send it back to them, we may find ourselves in court. So your call, what do you want to do?
I'm a little surprised that they don't have a representative here tonight, to be quite honest with you. I thought their attorney or the applicant, someone might be here to even listen to this discussion. And I'll probably say some things I shouldn't, but here we go. I only see.
First of all, let me tell you, I didn't tell them we were going to talk about this.
Okay, so they may not see it on agenda.
Right.
They can go back and listen to the tape. There's only two ways that I can see that I signed this. And that is if three of you tell me to, or a judge tells me to. Because going off of what they sent back, their so-called experts aren't experts. They're just people that happen to be in the field, and only one of them's even a doctor, and he's not even listed there. A registered nurse is not an expert in this field, in my opinion. They talk about the financial burden. One of their so-called experts runs a home that only has 6. They're asking for a reasonable accommodation of 12. Well, one of their own people in their own, that they sent us, runs a home that only has 6 in it. So how can you need 12 for it to be therapeutic when she's running a home that has 6? And how can it not be economically feasible when she's running a home that only has 6 in it? They made comments of that we allow these homes in our city already. Well, we haven't allowed any new ones. And they brought up reference to the women's home that's over by my house. It's in a totally different category. It's a nonprofit owned by a religious organization recognized in the state of Utah. They don't even fall under the same category. It's not the same thing, nor did we allow it. It was an existing home that changed part of its use.
The one they claimed though expired and then they had to resubmit and redo it, and it was while we were a city.
It was redone while we were, they changed the use while we were a city. They did change the use of it, but it's a different type of use, different type of organization that owns it. It's not a for-profit therapeutic home. It's a religious organization running a nonprofit. And those are totally different uses, one that we don't have an ability to regulate at all.
So can I just step in here? I said to him in my letter that we have never granted a reasonable accommodation to any other entities. And thank you for telling us about those because we're going to go after them.
They did. They originally mentioned 3. In the reply, they only mentioned that 1 and acknowledged that John's what he put in there. They put in there that they have to have 12 to be, we have to give them a reasonable accommodation so they can have 12, so it's economically viable for them. If an industrial company comes in and builds widgets, and the industry standard is it costs $1 for a widget, but they want to do it for 50 cents. They can't ask me for a reasonable accommodation so they can build it cheaper in where the price point they want to be at and allow me to suspend Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, make accommodations for them so they can compete or outcompete in another market. I don't see it happening. So I say that I see 2 ways of me signing this. And that's the only 2 ways I see it happening. That's my opinion.
So in your three council, you're not one of them.
I am not one of them.
But you just thought you'd qualify that
Yes,
for
thank,
sure.
thank you for clearing that up.
So I think those are good points. And I would be in favor of replying back and saying, this one expert that you quoted doesn't have any statement here. The other one is only a nurse, and the third one runs a home with 6. So we need you to reestablish your professional or opinions. And I would just add this, years ago, there's a residential treatment facility down by me. And they brought in, originally applied for like 80, what they call, let's see, how did they say it? Functional, something, some kind of functional disabilities. Anyway, to bring in all these, and so I was ahead of the committee that tried to stop some of this. And so I had a conversation with the director of the Utah Boys Ranch. And I told him what was going on, and he said, well, the bottom line in all of this is the more people you have in close proximity to each other, the more trouble you're gonna have. So what that says is, if they've gotta have 12 in that house, we're gonna have more problems with them than if they only have 6. And our report here from the sheriff, the bulk of it is from that home over by Kale's. Everything from assaults to mischief to vandalism.
You know how many people?
Felony vandalism.
I don't know, do they have about 8 there?
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of making them toe a little bit more of a line.
Every time we get one of these, there's a couple from Bronzewood on there.
Yeah, to be clear, when you say you're in favor of going back against them, continuing the argument, you're most likely in favor of starting litigation.
Well, yeah, you said that.
I did say that.
Not to that point yet.
Craig, just
I
reminding you.
I hate litigation, and I would prefer to avoid it any way possible, but
The new budget has that in it.
oh, well, thank you, Terry. But if they're gonna provide
I showed it to
expert witnesses, let's see some kind of a clinical study that shows where a group home of 12 or more is significantly better. Show me something. Show me something somewhere other than the opinion of someone who runs a group home.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if they present us with a summons or a court date, or they sue us, at any point we can, and we figure we don't want to get into that, we can always say, okay, we acquiesce, we'll give in.
They may sue for damages.
They'll sue for damages and lost time.
Yep. They'll say we've lost millions. I mean, I don't want to take their side, but that's what they're gonna say. We've lost millions because you guys have delayed us.
Well, they can say that, but their own financials say that they are not gonna make any money.
They will if they sue us.
It's hard for them to say that we're gonna sue you for millions when their own financials show that they'll barely be able to turn profit. I think their financials are bloated, and I think they're a mess, but
Yeah, everybody wants to come and put one of these in Erda.
Okay. Straw poll, what councilman wants to ask Craig to sign?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Who wants to ask Craig to sign the permit? I don't have any hands raised. I think you have your
Okay,
direction.
I have my directions. This will be fun.
Council representative reports?
I've got a couple. One is I want to hit real quick on is the fine or our insurance is coming due, the liability one. Everybody remembers that like 3 or 4 page deal we had to fill out that first time. Do you have vehicles? Do you do the police? Do you do this? Do you do? And we did, no. Well, they sent me another one because it's up for renewal. Of course, I did no, but they added a few extras. And so I called to verify to make sure I was filling out correct, because I threw in sewage and gas lines and stuff. Says the city has no utilities, we do not operate any of this type of deal. No. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's okay with me continuing on. And then the one big one says, but, or do you have people that do this stuff for you? And then that was about the only yes. Like we contract out the police, we contract out the roads and stuff like that. So just making everybody aware that's the same paperwork that's going to be coming up in June, I think it is. But that's another thing to keep in mind, that budget time's coming to an end. So we're going to have to start working on one, have one like one in May to like, and then the final one in June and stuff like that. I've got kind of a working one. I sat down with Scott and kind of went over. I didn't know if you guys want me to set up a meeting with each of you and show you how I've got it going and how the old compared to the new and that, or if you just want to do it all in like one big meeting or something. I'm good either way, so.
It wouldn't take that long if we just went over it in city council meeting.
You have to present a tentative budget.
Right, and that's like it says, the one that's for May and stuff, and then, but I'm talking about before I even got to that point, you gotta start somewhere, and here's the basis that I've got projected of the amount we paid last time to what we're gonna have to owe this time, and yada, yada, so.
We could certainly do it on a long, boring work meeting.
It wouldn't even be a long one.
No, it's not gonna be a long.
It doesn't, the way Terry's got it lined out, it's pretty straightforward, and it only took us 10 minutes.
I've only added I added like 2 categories. One is, well, I can just kind of give you an idea of some changes. It's like for the clerk salary, instead of just doing like figuring a half or part-time, I budgeted for a full-time. Now, whether that turns into one, or if we want to get another whatever, but the money will be there. That's the main thing, is no matter what we do, if it's not in the budget, and everybody's got to remember that, if it's not in the budget, we can't do it. You have to modify the budget or whatever. You can't just do it and then check on it later. The other is I put in for a full-time treasurer. So I got my in case of emergency break glass type thing, you know, so. Because I couldn't step out before because we didn't have a budget to replace it. Not too many will work for the Erda bucks still, so.
I have not.
There's only one person here that'll vote in favor of not doing the budget.
And then the other is emergency operations. I made that a category and put in some money for that, so future things. I mean, we used the discretionary fund this time to cover that, so it was okay, but I actually budgeted that, so that's kind of the stuff that's gonna be different maybe than the last ones.
Terry, why don't we carve out 15 or 20 minutes in your portion of the next meeting, and if we end up with another big meeting agenda, then we'll move it on to a work meeting before the meeting.
Yeah, like it says, it shouldn't take, I mean, as long as everybody's in agreement type thing, it shouldn't take that long.
Okay.
And then what we'll do, I don't know if everybody's aware of that, is we're gonna do the public meeting will be the same time if we have to adjust this year's budget and then do the new year budget the same period, so.
All right.
Then another was, I was on a conference call yesterday with the Twila Valley Airport, And in fact, tonight they had a meeting from 6 to 8 on their projected new everything coming. And so on a couple of the things that I had, right now, it's like they're set up, the runways only can do King Air and smaller, like the Super King. But eventually they want to go to the Super King and the Cessna, the jets. But they'd have to increase the runway for that. So, but that's down the road. But one thing you got to keep in mind is that the Tooele Valley Airport is designated as relief for Salt Lake City and their general traffic. So as they keep getting more that way, they're gonna start sending it this way.
So this is something new then, because every time I've pinned them down on this in meetings before, they've said, no, we're not extending the runway. We're not.
This is down, like I said, this is way down the road. They
Yeah.
have to buy out the property owners and that. And one of them was there tonight at that deal, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't too enthused about seeing his property that might be potentially.
Who was that? Who was that?
I think there was a 6 Mile representative there.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't think they would want to be
Yeah, so,
forced into selling.
and they were working on now, I know Stansbury was one of them and Grantsville's one of them that's in the bid or mix for delivering utilities there, their sewer and water. And that's kind of their main stepping stone is once they get sewer and water, then they anticipate that a lot more operations are gonna flock there. Because I can tell you what they're talking about now is when you're on them smaller planes and you're sitting at Salt Lake Airport, you're waiting for takeoff and you're sitting there idling them jets and the gas fuel gauge going ding, 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 you know. So whereas if they come out here, it's like psh, psh, and gone. So they're trying to shuffle that. And then the one part I didn't like a lot was apparently the Reno Air Show is having problems staying there and they're thinking about shipping it somewhere else. But I think the county's kind of wanting that or something. And they also want to expand and get offices and stuff like that. So right now, the snow removal and stuff like that, it's not on site. They have to wait till it's done, like at the main one in Salt Lake, and then ship it out here and do the deal here. So there are
Really? I didn't know that.
some deals down the road coming with the Tooele Valley Airport.
I do know they have $8 million to spend on utility infrastructure, but they haven't been able to sign a contract with anyone to send it to them yet, so.
I'm thinking they're getting pretty close with one of the cities. And then we've already kind of went over the water mitigation stuff. He's even been on TV and stuff, that same guy that comes to Scott and I's presentation. The water snow equivalents dropped down to 29 inches from the last meeting we had. Both reservoirs are about 50% capacity right now. And this was before the heat up and stuff like that. And out in, just to give you an example of how bad Vernon is, theirs was like, I think, water snow equivalent was 37 inches. So they're really worried about.
Yeah. And they're not gonna be able to hold even half of it.
It's almost full yesterday.
Yeah, it's, so, but for Erda City, we're not in too bad a shape. I've been checking on some of the culverts. There's still some more I gotta check on. And hopefully, when the water does come, we'll be able to channel it. The place I'm really worried about is 1200 West, where that ditch was filled in. The culvert where it comes down 1200 West and goes underneath Erda Way is there. And it's in place. We might need to clean it out a little bit. And when I say we, I mean me and Frog in my pocket and Terry. But other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Another thing we could do though is talk to get a meeting with Jed too and see
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
stuff he has to offer.
There's still that one issue up at the end of Moyle Lane. I've got to go talk to him. The one house is not occupied, and they're probably the ones that own that property. The house isn't finished yet. The other one is Greg Zumwalt. So it goes between those two homes, and then it just stops. And so that's going to be a problem. Water does start coming through there. Anyway, so no reason to panic, and we have sandbags ongoing. Given out, I don't know. 100 sandbags.
6 pallets full now when I drove by today.
Yeah, there was another project last night. It looks like
Sand's almost gone.
Looks like I didn't leave them quite enough sand or enough bags, or they would have used it all. Yeah, there's a pile of sand about the size of that desk right there, that tray right there.
Oh, that's another thing. I guess I don't know, we jumped the gun or what, but the state gave the county like 1 million sandbags, and so we're gonna get 2,000 of them for nothing.
Yeah, for nothing.
And I guess, what was it, was it Adobe, or which one was supposedly your first?
Geneva Rock. Geneva Rock said they'll give us a load of sand if we go get it. They'll give us 1 load of sand. Terry and I bought some more sandbags and donated those. So we've almost, let's see, we've filled up almost 1,000 sandbags. We'll have to move the rest of them tomorrow or the next day out of the church parking lot. We'll move them up to my place again.
We got 2,000 bags coming, so we don't have to worry about that. The only thing we'll need is sand.
Yeah, if we decide to fill more, we'll just get some sand. Yeah. So I don't think we're gonna flood away like we did in '83.
Keeps warming up and cooling, we should be okay. That's all I got.
Me too.
All right, the planning and zoning, as we heard last week, they granted an extension to Erda Estates. Tilby Village has made a request to the planning and zoning to do an extension for them.
Which one is Tilby Village?
The one right next to them, it's Evan Coon's farm.
Okay, where Ensign's building?
It was same PUD, same chapter 9, granted on the same day. So that'll be coming to planning and zoning. As of right now, we don't know if there'll be anything else on their agenda.
Was it
Their
also
meetings
locked
are
up
close.
by a lawsuit or?
Yes. Yeah, the two of them they were approved together, they were in the same lawsuit together. So I can't speak for the planning and zoning. I would guess that they would give this one an extension also, but don't know.
You heard any more about the reception center?
Just that they want to start moving forward, but they can't until there's an application made.
Is that Joe's or is it Daryl's?
That's Joe's.
He has to go from the RR5 to commercial, right? Is that where we're standing?
I don't know exactly how all that fits within the PUD that they have, because there's commercial approved in that. That'll probably be a good talk with Rochelle and how they're going to do something there, but until they make an application, we don't know what they're gonna do. So, and the application will have to go to the planning and zoning for amended concept plan, I guess. So that was that. I did put in capital improvements wish list so we can get on the grant. We're on the list so we can apply for grants. I got that in barely, but I did get that in. And then mosquito abatement, they're doing making some major changes down there, getting ready for mosquito season. invested in a drone this year to spread bait. The nice thing about that is it should free up a lot of man hours. I think it'll pay for itself that way, but also they can fly over a field to a wet spot, a spring, and treat it without someone tromping through a hayfield to get there. So that'll be nice. If anyone's listening, if you start seeing any mosquitoes, give me a call or call mosquito abatement. That's one of the primary ways they have of knowing where to go test and treat is when people are calling them. We also approved for them to buy a software and a scanner where they can use artificial intelligence to identify mosquitoes. Rather than having someone sit there and count mosquitoes and identify them under a microscope, they can put them in a tray and the computer will.
So they don't mix them up with gnats?
Yeah, it's quite a process, and it's amazing the amount of man hours gets tied up counting mosquitoes. So they know what they have, what breeds they are, so they know how and what to treat. So. Yep. Anyway, the updates from those three.
Anything else? General comments?
I just got one to let everybody remember. It's just like we talked about earlier, that elections are coming up. It could be a whole new council coming up. There's 3 positions that possibly could change. But it's not this fall that people got to think about. It's like the first week of June when you got to either apply or say you're going to run or do whatever. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware it's the first week of July and not like this fall. You don't have till then.
First week of June.
First week of June.
June 1 through 7 is the candidate declaration period. So if you're going to rerun at that point, we need to make an appointment.
Or if you intend to run.
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
Can I just ask a question? It's concerning the roads. Because I don't know who is responsible for Bates Canyon Road where the dirt is.
The dirt is?
You know where you come around Bates Canyon Road and hits Tom's Lane and the lane continues down and it's dirt?
Oh, yeah.
The county's always maintained that, road graded it. And who is responsible for that now? The Erda or the county?
So we are, but we've hired the county to do that.
Well,
They're not doing it, huh?
The county,
So they're not,
call the county?
call Coral, yeah.
All right,
yeah, and if she gives you any flack, call me and I'll call her.
all right, because that's kind of gotten bad over the winter.
Yeah.
I'll
bet it has.
Started grading roads this week.
They did start this week and
Has been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
so I need to come see you. I've been after them for weeks to come blade the island or warms up and they have to.
You have to do all the.
We'll get it on the schedule, get on the schedule. I remember they showed up today.
Pulling
Buddy, they had.
stuff that need to start putting together.
They fill in potholes. They fill in, to the school.
Declaration.